There are some moments which clarify wars which otherwise can seem morally confused. So much so that you might think, well, both sides bad as each other, Israel, Palestinians, for instance. Now, the latest moment of such clarity was last Friday when a Palestinian man in a blue car deliberately drove it right across the road and straight into a bus stop and killed two boys, two brothers, one just 6 years old, the other 8, leaving another brother who survived crying at the funeral. Now, also murdered was a 20-year-old religious student. They were all Jews. They were obviously Jews too, Orthodox. The driver himself was shot dead soon afterwards. He turned out to be a Muslim from East Jerusalem with Israeli citizenship and also a criminal record. What's more, he had mental problems, had been released from an Israeli psychiatric hospital just days earlier. And so you might say, well, look, every side in a war has its crazies and you can't hold one side responsible for having one when there's probably others on the other side as well. Got that. I got that. And in a war, it's also true that the innocent can also die. I mean, Israeli soldiers last month killed a 14-year-old boy when they were attacked during an anti-terrorism raid on a refugee camp in Bethlehem. But the difference here is not just that in that case, one, we've got the deliberate murder of two little boys, albeit by a disturbed man, and on the other, the shooting of a teenager by soldiers under attack. There is a difference there. I mean, you've got to say. But for me, the big difference is the reaction. Now, even in a war, I'd say civilized people would regret the killing of young children, even of their enemy. And if there are others that don't really care that much, at least that have the sense of shame, not to actually celebrate the killings. But the murder of these two little boys was indeed celebrated. For instance, in Gaza, this man posting an edited clip of himself telling two boys, seemingly his sons, to hand out sweets to drivers. It was also celebrated by these Palestinians. And one Palestinian social media activist even called the murder of these kids heroic. Murdering little kids, heroic, and accused Israel of assassinating the killer, who he called a martyr. And this is not unusual, I'm afraid. I mean, last month, the Palestinian government shot dead 7 Jews leaving a synagogue in Jerusalem, the youngest of those dead, just 14 years old. And all of them had been people that had just been praying. The next day, a 13-year-old Palestinian boy shot 2 more Jewish civilians. Now, again, we're told, oh, look, both sides bad, cycle of violence, you know the whole shtick. You hear it every time. The left-wing Guardian newspaper, for instance, said, well, this killing outside the synagogue was only after Israeli soldiers killed 9 Palestinians in a refugee camp. So there you go, cycle of violence. But that yet again ignored the moral difference, because nowhere in that article did the Guardian say who those Palestinians were that the Israeli army had killed. In fact, 3 terrorist groups, including Hamas, admitted that the dead were almost all their own terrorists. And Israel said those terrorists had been planning another major attack. And you've got to ask, isn't there a difference between killing people who were at prayer and killing terrorists? How is that a cycle of violence? Isn't it clear that when one side deliberately slaughters civilians, the other must defend itself? But even if you don't accept that, once more, look at the reaction to the killing of those Jewish worshippers. Another moment of clarity. Once more, celebrations in the street. Jews have been killed. Once more, sweets handed out to motorists to celebrate with them, to celebrate the murder of a 14-year-old Jew among the victims. 14. Now, there are also Jews who Yes, they do react foully to the deaths of Palestinians. I've seen a couple of rallies to that effect. But in years of watching events in Israel, I don't see scenes like this. Israeli Jews making a party of the slaughter of children. For me, that is a real moment of clarity.